For years, white wine has played second fiddle in the red-drenched landscape of California wine country, including where we sit locally. But now some of the most visionary minds in the region are flipping that script on its head. The White Wine Invitational. But all right, before we jump in, I want to give my friends, Tin City Distillery, some love. If you know me, I am all about this private barrel that I got with them. I just go up there and babysit it, see how it's doing, talk to it, pet it. It's their private barrel club. It lets you blend your own whiskey, taste it with the team. You can check out how it's evolving, and then you should walk away with a couple dozen bottles of something no one else has. It's bold, completely custom, and only for my friends at Tin City Distillery. Let them know you heard it here on The Pour. Be part of their private barrel club. You'll get, I think it's like 15% off all the times that you go and show up there. Yeah, you're in. You are in. If you see me up there, we'll taste that in my barrel. Check it out, tincitydistillery.com. All right, the White Wine Invitational. In its second year, Paso's bold new answer to the question, what if white wine got top billing? I don't even think there's a white wine emoji. Taking place Friday, June 20th from 4 to 7 at Rava, the White Wine Invitational. This curated event features about a dozen top-tier small production wineries pouring their most expressive white wines, even orange wines, all in celebration of style, creativity, and what's next for the region. So many great whites grow here. You'll taste from the likes of Monochrome, Barton Family Wines, Tablas Creek, Kinero, Giornata, Paix Sur Terre, Madrone, Union Sacré, Rava, Rococo, and this last brand, almost looks like a world war. It's like IIWII. I have no clue how to say it. It's new to me, so I'm learning it, and I completely apologize for butchering your name. I know that's not the way you probably want people to talk about it, but we'll talk about it during the show. Each bringing something fearless and flavorful to the table. Think, I don't know, skin contact Falangina, maybe a amphora-aged Chenin Blanc, whatever, tons more. It's not just a tasting, this is a movement. Proceeds benefiting much charities, so you can swirl, sip, and support the White Wine Invitational. Links in the show notes. Check out this conversation. We got Dave McGee of Monochrome, Paso's only white wine label, and really the spearhead behind this. And I got to thank Ryan from Paix Sur Terre for reaching out to me as well. Joe Barton is also here. Joji, excited. He's old school. And Brad Ely, the winemaker for Barton Family Wines. Love these guys. Here to all kind of talk about it, tell stories, pour a little insight into what makes this event and white wines here so good. So exciting. And they brought some whites, too. Can't wait to crack these open. Welcome to The Pour.
For the last 15 years, Adam Montiel has been bringing you the stories, the people, and the producers that make wine better and more fun. Whether you're a connoisseur or a cork. Here, we taste it, we spill it, we leave it all on the table. It's The Pour with Adam Montiel.
I remember when Dave came in, I was like, all right on. Somebody who's finally just going to do all whites, because that's all I've ever wanted to do. Me and Brad talk about it all the time, and that's
every day.
That's what we drink for the most part, and it's always been a little bit of a struggle to find the white grapes in Paso, just because there's not as much planted. Historically, it's always like Paso always started where it was. Where is it going to go out of the area to? Who are the end users? And that would always be Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. And not that Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay don't do well in Paso, but I don't think they're the best suited grapes for that appellation for the most part. It's a little warmer. So we're starting to really try to, get more people to plant the white grapes that we all know do well there. And so, it goes back to the Chenin days. There was a whole ton of Chenin all over Paso for a long time. I'm talking 70s and 80s. But that was it's Tennant to Inglenook, and so it's only been over probably the last 15 years.
Did it flourish then? Was it badass then, or did we not know what to do with it or where to grow it?
I just think it was just, it was independent growers looking for a market, and, if you were selling, white grapes out of the area, that's probably what they were looking for.
Yeah.
And, I worked for KJ a long time ago, and that was what they were getting out of Paso was Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. It's because that was part of their programs. It went into their coastal blends or went into their California blends, and they did really well. And then it really wasn't until you I really think the Perrins and the Tablas came in, and it really said, okay, hey, we can do different things here that do really, really well.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of blossomed from there.
Dave, you built really an entire project, an entire winery on the ideas that white wine deserve the same stage as reds do in Paso. How has that been?
It's been really good. I think, as Joe said originally, Paso was much more known for reds and a little bit of Chardonnay and so forth. But, as I always tell people, Paso gets pretty hot. And I don't know about any of you, but when it's 105, the last thing in the world I want is a big burly Cabernet or Syrah or Zinfandel.
Very true.
So having some great white wines around, I just felt it was needed. And I also felt that it was important to put the same kind of effort into white wines that people normally reserve for their best reds. And so that's what I've tried to do. And I think a lot more winemakers in the area are now starting to do that as well.
Yeah, Brad, for so long, white wines, they never really got the respect that the red wines did in the tasting room, right? The white wines, if there were some, it was just to build you up for the main event.
Yeah, it was almost like a novelty.
Yeah.
A lot of wineries maybe make one just to have a white. And sometimes it's a nondescript white just to kind of get you going. And then it was heavy red after heavy red. For me, especially at home, like we drink mostly whites and they find themselves on the dinner table and at all occasions. So hopefully people can start to see, especially in our area, that these whites are really fresh. They're a little lower in alcohol. You can drink more of them. It's hot out. It's super refreshing. And it's just a great conversation starter.
What do you think, Joji? Why are whites having their moment now? Why has it been for so long people have maybe been sleeping on them? Was it just we learned, wow, they can grow here to world-class levels as well? Is it just took time for heads and hearts to wrap around them? Or what do you think? Why are white wines having their moment?
Well, I think a lot of it is just people are just now finally getting exposed to things besides Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay. There's always the trick is, there's always seemed like there was a comparable coming from Europe or somewhere else around the world. And then it kind of ingratiates itself to California. And, you just didn't have places like Paso that were given, I always look back, it's like there's always an end user. Like when I talk to growers, I'm like, and when you talk to growers, like, okay, who's going to take truckloads? So it's hard. Smaller guys like us, we're like, hey, I need a couple tons of this, a couple tons of that. Like, well, man, I need to sell truckloads. So they have to find an end user. So when you talk about, varieties, obscure varieties, that's not truckload stuff. I'm not looking for, 25 tons of Falangina.
Right.
So you have to start the baby steps of it. And then also, too, to convince guys to plant it. But as far as the consumer goes, now that we finally, got, either wineries to plant them for themselves or wineries to get into relationships with growers, to do a little bit at a time, now you're getting the consumer the opportunity to try it. And I really feel like, even this alcohol ABV kind of thing where, whites generally with lower alcohols, higher acidity. I feel like the cuisine and I feel like just the world we live in is just much more approachable to that.
Yeah, it's begging for it, yeah.
Yeah, the lifestyle of I know how I eat. Not a lot that I eat goes with big-ass Cabernets all the time. Mm-hmm. Let's be real here. That's what Brad was saying. Like, when you go to your table, I'm like, what do I look for at night? I look for a white. And I just think the general public, just especially the domestic consumer, just hasn't seen the variety of all the things out there. They just think, oh, I don't want a Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc. Like, no. There are so many different flavor profiles out there, and weight, style, and it's just now that there's these varietals that are getting planted in our area, whether it be the Rhones or Italians, or Spanish, you can see those varietals doing really well here, and I guess people just never saw them before. Now they're seeing them. I think it's their interest base is going up and up and up and up and up.
What is it about the discovery, Brad? Like you think about, as you're learning wines, right? I think of like my gateway wines, and it was maybe like Opalo Mountain Zin, or you're learning the big red wines, and I'm sure there was some reds from Joji back in show one. Mm-hmm. You're just like, oh my God, killing it. But then you're like, oh my gosh, whoa. Then in the red wine world, you like, oh, I'm learning about Pinot, I'm learning about Counoise, and all these other. And then at some point, you're like, you find a white that you start to associate some of the great things that you love about reds and wine independently. And then at some point, the bug and white wine just bites you. Is that the way it happened for you? Is that the way you see it happen to fans of Barton Family Wines and Grey Wolf? What is that evolution?
I mean, yeah, granted, I got into reds before whites, and I always thought of whites as the meal starter or, something to drink after work, but not really giving it much thought. And then you start to have some more profound whites that really get your mind working. And I think that's something that I see a lot. I'll talk to someone like, oh, I don't like white wine. Well, what white wines have you had? Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Albarino. We're like, well, have you had this? And we'll pour them something that they've never even heard of, and their eyes light up. And all of a sudden you're like, you do like white wine. And so it's like being able to repeat that and then getting people on their road to discovery of all of these really cool white wines that are available. And I mean, they're delicious. They're usually a little more affordable. So it's been really fun.
Yeah.
Kind of sparking that in people, and especially in our guests. We're fortunate. I think we make between 8 and 10 different white bottlings every year, which is a lot more than a lot of Paso wineries. And we get to share that story and see people physically light up and have joy with these white wines. It's pretty cool.
I don't know. Have we hit our 10 years, Dave? Have we hit our 10-year anniversary almost? Or
not yet.
Not
First
yet?
vintage was 2016.
Okay, cool. So we're
next
almost
year,
all right.
yeah.
So you started this brand, and it was like just whites. And how did you kind of take? Okay, here's my style. Here's what I want to be known for. In the beginning, I remember interviewing you and Riley, who was your winemaker at the time, and you've really been doing this on your own for the last several vintages. How did you kind of go? Okay, here's my style. Here's what I want to learn, and then here's how I kind of want to move forward with it.
Well, actually, my winemaking style stems from when I was first learning how to make wine in my garage up in the Bay Area as a hobby.
Yeah.
And at first, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You don't know what the best fermentation temperature, the right amount of oak, any of that stuff. So I figured I'd make a bunch of different versions, and I'd figure out what was the best way to do it and do it like that. What I figured out instead was having a bunch of different versions that had all been done differently resulted in wines that had a bit more character and complexity, which is what I was aiming for. And so that's kind of become the way I make all the monochrome wines. Each barrel, each vessel is made completely differently, and then I use those as building blocks to assemble the final blends.
So monochrome, you really want someone to know, like when they hear that name, obviously, yes, all whites, but the style in which we make these whites, it varies, and there's a lot of different, influences in there.
Yeah, I try to not only make things a little bit more, complex and layered, but I also try to instill creativity into the winemaking process. I feel like wine is a general category. It can be very stodgy, where people do the same thing over and over and over again, and you look at most other forms of creativity and you don't expect that. You expect people to do something new and change their style and try new things and not just do what everybody else is doing. And that's what I've tried to do from the beginning. So consequently, everything changes all the time.
June 20th, we're gathering for the second White Wine Invitational. Yep. Joji, how many producers we got? Let's kind of...
I don't know, Dave, how do we get all together?
Please. Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, we got 11 producers that are going to be out there, and each of us have a heavy focus on white wines, and so everybody's going to have probably at least 3 or 4 or 5 of their whites there. So
will there be a red in the house under the table? Is it?
I don't think we're supposed to.
No, they're not supposed to be now.
So we are
Maybe
literally
like a light chillable red.
Yeah, that would be acceptable.
Well, see, now we're getting into the rules, and
Yeah, no,
but come on, like you've never cared about rules.
Wants to be that guy.
Then I'm gonna
The
bring
guy who brings booze to Wine Fest at the park back in the day.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of reds in Paso without someone sneaking one more into this. So certainly our focus is going to be on all whites. There will be a couple sparklings that Rava is going to be bringing.
Cool.
So it should be great. We've got some really great producers. I think some of the best producers in Paso for white wines, and so it should be a heck of an event.
Let's talk about how this group comes together. You guys are all figuring it out. I know I've been talking to Ryan Pease a little bit, so I know he was probably one of the instrumental founding people in this White Wine Invitational. How do we go, okay, who do we want? Obviously, when we say invitational, we're inviting people, right? We are trying to curate a certain style and a certain quality of the brands that we want in the building.
Yeah, let me just say that the White Wine Invitational is just one part of the larger effort. The group is really focused on trying to bring more attention and change the narratives about Paso white wines. And so this was just one component of that. But really our goal is to start exposing people more to some of the really cool, complex, interesting, quality white wines that are being made available here in the area. And so we wanted to gather a group of producers that really had the quality. They were doing something interesting. Whites were really a focus in their program rather than an afterthought. And we also wanted producers that typically made 3 or more white wines per vintage. So consumers could go there and feel confident that they were going to be able to taste at least a couple of white wines.
So it's not just a fly-by-night skew that they added in there. Like these people focus, a little bit on, at least a little bit on whites.
Yeah, so we wanted both quality and quantity. I mean, there are a couple of producers, like Epic, for example, right? Great white wines, but they only make 2 of them. Yeah. And they make them in pretty small quantities.
But they're damn good, though.
They're damn good.
Really good.
But most of the time you go there and you can't get them because they're not pouring them. You know? I mean, we'd love to have them involved at some point, but we wanted people.
Also, that's also a brand too that I think makes your event look better. If you got a brand like Epic pouring, even if they got one SKU, even if because it's just like the Epic White, right?
Yeah.
But that's
our plan is definitely to kind of start with a small group that had really quality white wines, put our best foot forward, and then we're slowly expanding that as we go forward, and then hopefully it'll grow into something that we have to go to the fairground because there are so many people involved.
So we do want to grow. That's cool. And I don't know, educational aspects of it. Do we do a as it evolves, do we do an early morning panel, or I don't know?
Yeah, those are all under consideration, and I think we're hoping to not only educate consumers, but the media. And also I think we're hoping to encourage more wineries here to focus more on trying to make quality white wines and really put an emphasis on it. And the other thing is trying to get, and Joe hinted at this, getting more growers excited about putting some really good white varieties into some of their top vineyards. And that's been a bit of a challenge, but I think they're starting to come around there. And part of that is they're recognizing some of the quality of white wines and also that they can command better pricing, which therefore means better fruit pricing.
I was just going to ask that. Like, what's in the way? Is it the fact that they can't, for Grenache, they can get a lot more?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Of course, it always starts with that. I mean, you always get into our new field that I purchased a few years back and planted. I planted all whites for that mere purpose. That I planted Vermentino, Picpoul, Claret, and Fiano just because there wasn't really any way to in the spot I wanted to. I mean, I feel like when you start talking about, as I'm looking at these bottles up here, when you start really talking about very unique ground, and very valuable ground, that's the hardest turn, because if you talk to, people who, especially guys who aren't wineries, they're just independent growers, like, hey, what can I put on this ground that's going to make me the most dollar? And the funny thing is that if you really have a strong, long conversation about it, you're like, as that price of those white grapes get better, you'll find that, your overall gross earn on that ground will be comparable, but it's just a hard conversation to convince that because they just see the $1. They think, how am I going to just get per ton? You're like, there's more to it than that. And then there's also recognition, hey, what's that going to, reflect on a bottle price and how's that reflect on our vineyard? It's just going to take time for, other property owners to invest in it just like we're investing in it. And I think that's what Dave was talking about with the wineries that are getting involved at the beginning here. We have gone a little bit more beyond a lot of the wineries around there as far as investing our energies into white wines and to really try to make it a big part of our program. And I'm sure it will grow out that, and as this gets more notoriety and gets more participation, sure, there's going to be a lot more people get involved, and that's what we'll move forward in the future. But I think at the moment, it's like, hey, get those peeps that are really just trying to push the envelope a little bit, and see if we can kind of start it foundationally and then let it grow from there.
Now, we know why white wine does so well. We know why red wine does so well in Paso, right? We hear all whether it's achieving ripeness, diurnal shift. What is it about Paso where it's taken us some time, but we are learning, wow, a lot of different varieties of white wine does great here.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it's just varieties that aren't traditionally California known. Like, most of, so when you talk about the greatest Chardonnays in the world, that's a lot of it's from Burgundy. Yeah. And Sauvignon Blancs, a lot of that is your Loire and your, in the northern part of France. Mm-hmm. As you move down to the south of that continent, you see that the varietals are quite different that excel. And that's what we had to go about, learning and finding, the varietals that are more consistent with our climate, like it was consistent in a lot of those warmer European climates. And you realize there's a boatload of varieties that do very well. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times you'll find it's that the varietal nature of it doesn't come out in the wines that you taste from those regions. You know, there's a lot of grapes in that wine. You don't know what they are.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to unwind that nomenclature first. You kind of got to go out, okay, you know, Claret's, you know, a fantastic varietal for the Chateauneuf, but, you know, you don't get a Chateauneuf white. You don't know it's mostly Claret or it's a portion of Claret.
Right.
And so that's kind of the start of it as far as just like educating people of these varietals and the Italian whites. I love Italian whites, but it's the hardest thing to figure out what's in all these dang wines, you know. And you'll find, it's Fiano, Falanghina, Trebbiano. I mean, there's a multitude of different varieties that are very conducive to doing well in our climate, but there's just no just standard knowledge from the everyday producer. Like they love a wine from Campagna or Vieto, you know, they just don't know what's in it, you know, and you try to translocate that to America. You're telling them, well, this is Fiano. They're like, well, what the hell is Fiano?
Yeah, right.
You know, that's why I think with this group that we're doing, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, I think like you were talking on, and David was talking about, the educational component, that would be a hell of a lot of fun for us because that was definitely our journey.
I'll lead a panel for that. That'd be fun.
It was totally our journey.
Talking white wine for an hour with a bunch of you guys. Like,
buying wines.
That'd be so rad.
Buying wines and unearthing it to ourselves and starting to really understand exactly what we're looking for. And then, you know, obviously with Paso, with the different, you know, Paso is just so unique because of its diversity and climate in just the region itself.
Yeah.
There's a boatload of opportunities on whites, you know, on all sides of the appellation. So it just really depends on what you're into.
Well, I think that's the other aspect of the larger region beyond just Paso is we have so many microclimates that vary so dramatically. It's one of the few places in the world where you can go, and I always tell people this, I've got a blend that has Gewürztraminer and Albarino in it, you know? So I work with Xavier. We go, you know, 90 miles north of Paso, up kind of Monterey County, northern Santa Lucia Highlands, much cooler climate area, get Gewürztraminer there. And then I blend it with some Albarino that's sort of, you know, Templeton Gap region. And that's the great thing about this area is you can go a fairly short distance and get dramatically different climates. And so that really allows us to pick and choose and create a lot of interesting wines that you could probably never make anywhere else in the world because there aren't that degree of variation such that you'd have regions that are suitable for each of those varieties.
Yeah. Brad, let me ask you, you started with the sparkling Vermentino.
We did,
Is that a new one for you guys?
That's a new one, yeah.
That's awesome.
We always do some sort of sparkling. It's been a blend. We've done Gruner. But Vermentino, and it's a variety that does really well in Paso. That actually reminds me of a story when I was working at Tablas Creek. I mean, Tablas brought in all of these white Rhone varieties, and then Vermentino, and that was one of the varieties that didn't fit in the whole portfolio. And the story behind it was the nurseryman in France thought, well, Vermentino is going to do really well in their climate. So he snuck it in the truck and they brought it in, put it through quarantine, put it in the ground, and lo and behold, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But Vermentino is one that we're having a lot of fun with making still. And then we thought it'd be a pretty good sparkling. And turns out
it's a great sparkling. It's fun.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
And then what is the one that you just poured here a second ago?
That was a Chenin.
That's Chenin.
That's Chenin.
And that's from up north in the Chalon AVA. So for our white program, lately we've been having trouble finding really good fruit in Paso.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely some out there, and we've worked with a lot, but lately we've been kind of traveling around and picking and choosing from other areas as well until these vineyards we have in the ground come onto production, and like we're talking about, more plants go in the ground. So we chased Chenin and a few other varieties just outside of Chalon. So this was one of the original cuttings from Dick Graff. So some of the original Chenin.
You know, being that you love white so much, what are you really looking forward to bringing on the 20th? How many different wines are you going to bring? What did you bring here? And what are you going to be bringing that day?
Yeah, some of these will definitely make it. We brought a Greco di Tufo, which is an Italian variety from the south of Italy.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's a big boy.
And it's amazing.
It's a big boy. Why? Like a Roussan, like a Viognier?
Ish. I mean, it just has a lot of tannic profile for a white grape.
Yeah, it's quite phenolic. The skins are super bitter and very tight. I mean, it turns orange in the press. It's like nothing I've ever made before.
Really?
And tastes fantastic too. This wine, we usually age between 6 and 10 months on most whites. At 10 months, this thing was so wound up that there was no way we were comfortable putting it in bottles. So we ended up letting it age for an additional total 15, 16 months, just to kind of let it round out because it had so much tension. Just tension, yeah.
And it needed it. It was weird. We were like kept going, man, that's gonna be on lees, just trying to get texture and trying to lengthen the palate. And
do you stir that lees up to get that mouthfeel a little
to
bit?
A point. I mean, it's you're kind of battling the age and the time, and you're using the lees for your own
It's got some color on it too, doesn't it?
Oh, it had a lot more.
Really?
This is more orange than the orange wine that we made.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a trip. But yeah, I mean, with this whole kind of things, and I think Dave started to hit on, I did, and Brad is like, I know we talk about Paso because we're Paso brands.
Sure.
But all three of us are chasing the opportunity of the Central Coast.
Yeah.
And, and that's going to be probably what makes this whole part of California maybe the most interesting place to make white wines because, even just getting outside of Paso over into Edna and, and down into Santa Barbara County, whether it be, Santa Maria, Happy Canyon, Santa Rita, San Lucia Highlands, Chalone, on the other side, the Gabion Mountains. Like there's such a ridiculous amount of different places to experiment beyond just the traditional Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. And that's what's kind of great about this whole area is that it's ripe for that experimentation platform.
Before we get into Dave's wines that you're going to be bringing to that day, I'm curious to talk to you about sparkling because, here at Timbre and the Lowbrow Studios, Josh makes, sparkling.
This is the Lowbrow Studio?
Lowbrow Studios,
I like
bro.
it.
Yeah. Lower brow. That's what they call lowbrow.
Lowbrow.
Well,
I'd start mine's probably lowbrow.
No, so slow. You live in Slow, right, Brad?
Yeah, I live right around the corner.
They have these different neighborhoods, and the Lower Broad has been kind of coined. It started
Lowbrow. I like
That's
it.
new to me, too.
It started around 2020.
I like it.
Yeah. Did you live here during COVID?
The tail end,
20,
yeah.
Okay, because there was this thing called the Lowbrow Howl, where every day at 8 p.m., you would hear just people, like they would howl in the neighborhood. And it was the coolest thing because everyone's locked down and this is where it started. But you would hear howls all over the southern part of town. It was so neat. Anyways, that's where the Lowbrow kind of came from. I didn't coin it. But I think, being that I really love the city. I love where we live. And I know that neighborhoods kind of contribute to like economic development. So when you have a neighborhood name that kind of like sticks. And so that's where we're going. Anyways, Lowbrow Studios, Josh of Timbre here, he bottles a lot of these great whites, whether it's Albarino or Riesling or whatever. And, forced carbonation, boom, that kind of the easy style. Do you feel like you want to sit there for 2 years on it and do the whole thing? Or are you down to just put some bubbles in a nice finished wine and just go to market with it?
It's just a different animal. I mean, we like doing pet nat because I feel like there's a little bit
fun, yeah.
There's definitely a little bit more skill involved in that in respect of what you can attain, and there's a little bit more of a process that goes into that. When you get to the traditional method champenois, that's just a very, very different path of travel that goes to the still wine portion and goes to the harvesting kind of ideology, and it's a much further investment.
Oh yeah, you got years to go away for it.
Yeah, and then it's a good thing. I just feel like for us, we like the pet nat deal because we can be creative annually.
So your sparklings are all pet nats.
Yep.
They're all like primary fermentation in the bottle.
Yeah, and every year
that's awesome.
And every year, I mean, like I said, we've done Gruner, we've done Vermentino.
Yeah.
I guess for us, just being playful, it doesn't lock us into something as dedicated to if you want to do a true Method Wall Champenois kind of program, you're into it 4 years before you're even thinking about changing the attitude of it.
And it's a completely different style, too.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like a bottle of Haliotide is it's like,
game
it's like,
time.
it's so game time is a brilliant way to put it. It's amazing.
But I also think too, like those are just two separate worlds of wine, because as we're sitting here talking about white wine and the white wine invitational, the sparkling world is its own world in itself.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
if you try to merge those two, not to say that they don't merge well together, but they're, like Brad's saying, stylistically.
But that's your gateway, because a lot of people love bubbles. And
Absolutely.
It's a great way to get people into still whites.
Totally. Well, the Prosecco's is one of the hardest charging categories there is. So it's not that there's not growth and opportunity there.
Yeah.
I think it's just really more of like, how much do you really want to get into as from a personal standpoint?
Yeah.
I mean, I love sparkling wines, but, I almost feel like, if you're going to do that, you should be all in, just like
Sure.
maybe don't do anything else but sparkling and just be, like Dave's doing with just all whites. Like, I don't know if I'd have the bandwidth to be doing other shit while I'm doing sparkling.
I would say there's actually a continuum in that, from method champenois approach to some of the other things. But I mean, at the other end of the spectrum, you've got things like Vino Verde, where you've got a little bit of spritz to
Little,
it,
like,
and
effervescence,
playing a little bit with that effervescence to kind of help pop the aromatics and things like that.
Yeah.
If I were to do something that was at all sparkling, I would probably try to do something like that.
Yeah, those are fun.
Kind of make a super Vino Verde, kind of take what's really kind of an everyday drink, but elevate it a little bit.
I love
give it a
that.
little bit of
Would you
spritz
use?
to it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, what variety would you use?
I don't know. My big challenge right now is figuring out how and where to do that on a small scale that I tend to work with, because most of those forced carbonization things are like big, huge industrial style tanks.
Yeah.
But
Find
do
you a small bright tank. We'll get you.
Well, you can do it here. I mean, Tamber does it for people.
yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
yeah.
That's good to know. But I mean, I've played around with little cream whippers and things like that. We can play with different types of gas and different amounts of gas and get totally different effects that you perceive in the wine. And it's pretty fun to play with. So maybe one day I'll turn that into an actual product, but we'll see.
No, I totally agree. Like you said, I mean, it maybe what we're talking about here is leading up to more of those who kind of get their feet wet into it, but don't want to get stuck in our continuum either, where they're like, no, actually, I'm gonna make some Vino Verde. So I mean, I totally
That
agree.
would be fun, like a low ABV kind of thing. 9, 10, 11, I don't know, whatever you can get away with, right?
Yeah.
Can you even do anything 9, 10, 11 in Paso?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? That's
There's
actually
ways.
one of the things I'm working on right now is seeing how far you can take it.
Harder in Paso only just because sugar-wise, it's sugar and acids sometimes are a little bit more difficult on that realm, but without trying to over-manipulate it.
Yeah.
You can.
This wine, Brad, this is good.
It's fun, right?
I really enjoy this.
different.
I've never had anything. I've never had it before. I've never had. It's so unique, but I love it.
It's got so much acid and so much tension, but then it's also honeyed and floral and almonds and hazelnut, but still fresh. It's
Well, that's one of the things I think that's really cool about this area, and I think people will experience that at the White Wine Invitational, is the diversity of different types of white wines, different varieties, different blends, different styles. And I contrast that. I go to this event down in Burbank every year, the California Wine Masters, and they have a lot of the top wineries and food producers in the state there. So a lot of people from Napa and Sonoma, and they make great wines, but it's like Chardonnay after Chardonnay after
of course,
Chardonnay, and they're all done kind of in the same style.
Yeah.
And then you come down to Paso, and it's just like anything you can imagine. Yeah. Somebody's doing something really cool with it.
What are you bringing? The big day.
Well, I'm still kind of deciding exactly what I'm going to bring, but I got
How many wines do you make
what
now?
do we got today? I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
I make eight blends per vintage typically.
Okay, cool.
But the two I've got today, one is called Centertone. You guys can
Sure, I'll
this
pour it
one
around.
if you want to. So this is primarily Grenache Gris, which is kind of an obscure
cool.
variant of Grenache. It's like halfway between red Grenache and white Grenache. Made that in a bunch of different ways, some of which were more like extracting phenolics, tannin, color. Others were more about aromatics and texture. And then blended those things together. And then blended in a little bit of pick pool. So it's got 10% pick pool in it as well. But it's kind of a fun wine. It's probably the most complicated wine ever made, I think, from a wine perspective. But it's been fun.
I bet. Yeah, that's fun. Go good with food.
And where's this Grenache Gris come from?
It comes from Onyx's vineyard, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was kind of Brian Brown planted it while he was there, and then he left. And Jeff and Drew came to me, and they were kind of like, well, we really don't know what to do with this stuff because no one we know has ever worked with it. So, let's get some to Dave. He'll play with it. He's enough to do that.
I really like that.
It's become one of my favorite varieties to work with.
What's a white, Dave, that you don't work with that you want to next? Like, what's on your list?
Godeo.
Grodeo.
Godeo. It's a pretty obscure Spanish variety, and I may be getting some of it planted here soon. Neil, if you're listening, let me know on that.
Collins?
Clavo.
Clavo. Nice. Robert.
He's planning on planting some of that for me at Plum Orchard Lane, but it's a really cool kind of obscure Spanish variety. I describe it as having some of the flavors and aromatics of Albarino with a little bit more of the texture and body of Chardonnay. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
I had some when I was back in London, and I've got another piece that I'm planting now, and like I was literally just beating my head. I'm like, God damn, this might be the one.
Really?
It's really good. I mean, it's just it's such in the middle of what we all like, which it's got the freshness, but then there's some texture and tension in it that you just kind of it just gives you every little bit of everything. Now,
in here, are you looking for something? Let's say you found a great variety to plant. Do you go, whatever I pick, it's got to be able to blend? Or do you go, no, I'm down to plant something that's going to go all by itself? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think you can kind of go both. I think from a consistency, you want to expose people to that varietal so they have something to attach themselves to. But then on your own personal level, when you have your winemaking that really creates a superior wine due to that, I think that's an option too. It's just really about the marketability of it at some point. But then also you're just and sometimes too, how it is. There's all a little bit of fudge factor and all the blends and 25 this, 75 that. I mean, there's definitely some game in there. But I think for me, I would be more kind of driven on letting the consumer see how good this varietal does in our region on my place, so that they can attach themselves to that.
Brad, what do you like about this wine if Dave's here?
Aromatically, it's super interesting.
Totally.
I mean, it's not Grenache Blanc, but it still has that snap of Picpoul.
It does.
But
have
the
that
palate's really, it has like this real breadth, and it finishes with like a slight kind of creamy texture, which you don't really think it would when you go down the aromatic pathway.
Funny you mentioned Grenache Blanc. This is one of those whites in the last decade that just sings here, doesn't it? I mean,
it kills it. It kills it up where we're at. It's good for both worlds because it does well on both sides of the river when it comes to Paso, and it's a great farmable grape. I mean, the grower's doing well with it. They're getting nice yields and I always tell growers, it's always a funny thing. I'm like, as they start seeing the knowledge and they start realizing the opportunity, I'm like, with white grapes, we generally don't ask as much, and not because we shouldn't or we don't want to. Is because whites just generally, tend to carry a more consistent crop. You're kind of protecting them a little bit more. You're not looking for much exposure.
So you're not babysitting in the vineyard as much?
You don't have like these reds that sometimes are like, I need 10 touches. I need you to do this, I need you to do that. The whites were kind of like, no, you're good. Just leave it alone. And also too, I'm going to pick it around 20 to 22 bricks and I'm not going to desiccate it. And they're like, ooh, that would be fantastic. Because most of the growers, it's the end of the term on the red side that's where they, when you, and not that everybody does this, but some of the mechanics of red wine making is extraction and concentration. Yeah. And so there's always this barometer of like, how far are you going to go? And every winemaker has his own play. And a lot of times the grower's caught in the middle on that, or he's like, hey, I'm ready to go. And they're like, nah, give it a little more time, and they're like, no, pick it up. Whereas the whites, we're always like, no, go get it. Go get it tomorrow. If you can get it tomorrow, I'd like it. And it's generally, for us, it's probably retaining more yield. So the grower you look at and you're like, I'm going to take a lot of the hardships out of it for you. Whereas like you're going to, we're going to manage weight, but I'm also too not going to hang you out there late. I like the lower ABV. I like the lower alcohol. I like the lower sugars. I like the higher acidity. Like it just plays into getting that stuff off earlier. And once again, that's all the grower wants is to get it in the barn.
Brad, I think of like me in radio and like you'd listen to someone do either a great bit or even an interview. You're like, I wish I did that. Or I wish I would love to interview that person. Like I would just, do you ever taste a wine as a winemaker and go like, oh damn, I wish I made that or think in those contexts is it like that a little? Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's, some unicorn producers, at least in my mind, where I know what their style is, and then you taste their wine, and like, wow, they pulled that off fantastically. Like, how did they do that? And that really gets your wheels turning, too. especially in the realm of white wine, because I feel like what you do with your whites is a bit more transparent than reds. Just with your different techniques.
That's so interesting.
You can age on lees, you can rack clean, you can go stainless, you can not filter, you can put it in different types of wood, and it has such a thumbprint. Whereas with reds, you have, tannin and phenolics and color and a lot more age. It tends to be...
Is it harder to mask the fuck-ups?
With whites?
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh,
Yeah. And a bad white is not fun to drink.
It's just so bad.
True.
A bad red, you're like,
so
all
true.
right,
You're
there's
like,
some stuff.
I messed around to put some more wood on it. I fixed it up. Like white, you're like, dude, you missed it from the top. You've missed it all the way through.
So this is something I always tell people. This is one of the reasons why I chose the name Monochrome. Is I'm kind of a photography enthusiast, and I saw a parallel there.
Yeah.
A lot of people think color photography is more interesting than black and white, but most fine art photography is done in black and white.
Yeah.
And I think most photographers will tell you it's harder to make a black and white photo work because you can't just kind of have a pop of color and hold people's attention. You got to get the basics right. The subject matter, the composition, the tone.
Yeah, totally
Well,
makes
think
sense.
of like Migrant Mother, that Dorothea Lange picture that was actually taken in Napomo, right? Or just some of these photos that with no color, but they just say so
It's a
much.
great comparison.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same thing. It's like what Joe was saying. I think it's harder to make a complicated white wine than a complicated red, because reds you can throw a lot of oak and tannin and extraction and cover up for a lot of things. Whites, you don't have that luxury. You've got to get the basics right, or it just comes out kind of flat and boring.
Is rosé like that, Brad? Were you easy to mess up?
No, I think it's on that same vein.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, with rosé, you have the added dimension of getting your color right and whatnot. But same thing with whites. It comes down to your picking window, because if you think about it, a red is fermented on its skins. A white, you're pressing the juice out, and once that juice is out, that's your form. That's
what you
your
got.
matrix. You have to go from there. You can't do much after that.
Let me ask you a rosé question, just because it's on my mind. Ask us to
Pink
Joe.
drank?
Yeah, Pink drank. Yeah, maybe that's why it's on my mind.
Maybe do a little plug right now.
There we go, baby. July 12th, Saturday, pinkdrank.org. No,
I need to give $5 for that.
Yeah. When
you get a free ticket.
When you talk about making rosé, and oh my God, I totally spaced on my question now. We were talking about whites and wanting to. What did you just say about whites? I want to reconnect.
We're talking about transparency of whites, but
But what was my question with regards to rosé?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe it was just kind of on how you can't really patch things up, right?
Yeah.
It really is expressive of all the different parts of the process, maybe.
Well, it's the same thing. Kind of going back to when we were just talking about reds and whites, and just the transparency of whites. Rosé has it too, and I think it flows all the way back to the pick. I mean, you are so deadly specific about the pick. I mean, reds you are too, but I feel like there's a little bit of grace at times with reds to where you can make up for different things, and you can maybe change your pace right in the middle of it. You're like, okay, I'm going to make this one a little bit more stylistically this way. I mean, you can use stem, you can use whole cluster. I mean, you got to
leave it on the skins longer. You can ferment hot.
You can do
ferment cold.
Yeah, there's things in your tool shed. Same thing. Yeah, I mean, we can do skin, skin contact on whites too.
Right.
But I still feel like there's a little bit more tools in your tool shed with the reds, whereas the whites, if you miss certain portions of it, I just don't feel like you can make it back up.
I remember my question on rosés now. It was about the color. Is there a universal, does someone just go, okay, I want to make a rosé, and because you were talking about dialing in color, and then it's you just dial in the color, or is there pretty much a ubiquitous, no matter where you're at, you want that sexy salmon kind of platinum, or is the spectrum of the kind of color rosé, maybe one winemaker wants this, maybe one winemaker wants Tavel deep, I don't know, or is it everyone is kind of searching for that certain color? I don't know.
Well, now you're in the world of difference between skin contact rosés, saulniers, direct to press. So there's all these different animals you can get into to kind of land it the way you want to land it. For me, I always feel like the Sauniers, you're going to have more phenolics, so that makes a very different wine. Just like a skin contact white, you're going to be dealing with more phenolics. So,
More mouthfeel.
yeah, more mouthfeel. And how do you approach that further on down the line as far as, the not just the fermentation, but just the aging of it or lack thereof. So, I guess that does kind of demystify our idea that, there's less things you can do with whites and rosés.
Yeah.
At least from my perspective.
Well, this wine we're tasting now,
Mike.
this wine we're tasting now is kind of an example that's kind of west of Tbilisi, and the idea here, I feel like, there are like 190 countries in the world, most of which have some degree of alcoholic fermentation, but we all just focus on the same, 5 or 6 European countries. So I'm trying to incorporate more non-Western European influences. So this is kind of a hybrid combination of actually ancient Georgian techniques from like 6,000 years ago. So a lot of this wine, about 45% of it was Albarino that was done in an amphora, aged on skins and stems for about 9 months. And then threw in a little bit of skin fermented Grenache Gris, and then balanced that out with more conventionally neutral barrel fermented Albarino and Picpoul. So it's kind of a combination of non-Western European influences and Western European influences. It definitely has a little bit of that tan and a little bit of the phenolics we talked about on the back end, but it's much more bright on the front end.
Are there wines that you'll make in your portfolio, Dave, that you go, okay, because I don't have reds, I want to have a white that someone can really chew on, really just kind of like, hey, you want this one for your meal that you're taking down to Ox and Anchor in Slow, or you're going to 6 Test around the corner? Here's what you bring.
Well, I definitely try to make a range, and some of them are a little bit more full-bodied than others, but I also make a lot of components that add certain characteristics to it. So center tone, there's a component where I was trying to extract specifically tannin and phenolics. And so I stomped all the fruit, or half the fruit, let that cold soak overnight, did the main press. Then after I took that juice out, then redlined the press, took that hard pressed juice, and then skin fermented that. And it came out... one of Parker's critics tasted the component and said she thought it tasted like a young red Bordeaux, which is kind of startling.
Yeah.
Even after
Did that scare you or delight you?
It delighted me. I mean, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then you have that in your tool bag to then titrate back in to get the effect that you're looking for. I mean, I don't think you'd want to drink a whole bottle of that by itself. But I use the comparison to cooking. You wouldn't necessarily want to chew a whole clove of garlic by itself or a whole onion by itself, but you throw a little bit of that into an overall dish and it can do some remarkable things. And that's the way I think about the little components that I put together for that purpose.
There's something just so great about a white wine. Like, it's bright, it's honest, and I really feel there's almost like a window into like all of you making it that you kind of get to experience a little better. Is there a piece of like your personality almost that you feel gets transferred into white wines differently than it does red?
I mean, I'll pimp Brad on this deal because, I had my own kind of ideology of what I was getting into. But, man, when Brad came on board and we got together doing whites, boy, we really spent a whole lot more time with using the lees. And they became so much more of a tool than I think I had ever used before.
And does this mean stirring it, batonnage, we're getting that mouthfeel?
It's part of the wine.
Okay.
It's always part of the wine. You never look at it as something that you're, and I'll let Brad lean into this a little bit more. It's just you forget that that's a huge component of it, not just a partially component. And the better you use it, the more you can create a more gratuitous wine and watch it evolve. So, I'll let Brad kind of lean into it more.
Yeah, what do you think?
I'm a heavy proponent of using lees. When I worked in France, the guy I worked for, he's like, lees is the sauce. The sauce, it binds everything. Lees is the sauce. Remember that. I'm like, okay, well, I remembered that.
Yeah.
And it depends on what style you're going for. I don't love to stir lees too much because you alter what that wine is. You can kind of make some bready aromatics and build texture. It has its place in certain wines. Some other wines I want to be completely transparent. And so we'll let them age on the lees, and there's a tall assist and some mouthfeel that does occur. But I don't necessarily need to incorporate that lees.
Yeah.
But, we make some Chardonnay, and I like a little stirring on the Chardonnay.
Tell me about you, Brad. I'm so, I've been following your winemaking journey since the beginning, and, maybe knew you right as you were leaving Tablas Creek and came back, and now at Joji's place and stuff. And you're in your first decade, really, of like having that winemaker title, right? And what great vintages, right? I mean, we just had 23, 21, 19. I mean, it has been a really exciting time, I imagine, for someone in their first decade and their first like winemaking, like this is a me gig doing it. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I think I got to this point quicker than I expected. And, there's a lot of, trial by fire and figuring it out. My first vintage with Joe was 2020, which was one of the most challenging vintages we've seen in quite a while.
Talk about getting thrown into the fire.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah,
Fire. Real fire.
Between smoke
Yeah,
and
literally.
smoke taint and heat and desiccation and stuff coming in at
And just
way
like
too high
our mental well-being with the
in
world
the middle
around
of
us.
a pandemic. Yeah. So, I mean, that was challenging. And then we were blessed with a vintage like 21, which was fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
And then you go back to another challenging 22, and then 23 was amazing. So, yeah, it's kind of a roller coaster.
Are 23 is like the best wines you've made so far?
I would argue that, yes. Yeah, it has all of the finesse and concentration of the 21s, but with an added dimension of fruit. They're fantastic.
What about you, Dave? Same thing. I mean, here we are. We're about to celebrate, almost 10 years of Monochrome. And again, like we touched on earlier, this was something that you were leaning on and leaning into, really popular, and, winemakers with great acumen like Riley Roddick and stuff. But now, how have you evolved as a winemaker? And same kind of positioning to Brad, like some great vintages in the last few years to really kind of hone in on your craft.
Yeah, there definitely been some great vintages. Some of them have been more challenging than others. 22 was was tough for everybody, I think.
Was it the heat or the labor?
It was just hard to time the pick, I think, because I had some Vermentino, for example, that went from, I think, 19 to 23 bricks in like 4 days, and it's just really hard to get the timing right. And as Joe mentioned earlier, that's very important to white wines, is getting that pick timing right. It's a little hard for me to compare vintages one to another because I always change everything completely every single year. So it's not like I'm doing the same wines year after year and I can line them all up and say, here are the vintage-based differences. But having said that, I adapt the blends and the styles based upon what I'm getting from that particular vintage.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the 20th. This is going to be a fun event. We got almost a dozen wineries coming out. What are you looking forward to? What?
I thought he was going to lean on me. It's like, what did you think? He's like, I'm just surprised you're still alive. He's like, how long you been? 30 years? Jesus. Sorry.
No, but it's kind of funny because I know that you having Brad now, and we've talked about this dynamic, Joe. Like here's this
because when they say 22, sometimes I say sometimes I'm like 2002.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I go so far back I can't even put them all together.
More than just like the way you evolved as a winemaker, but as a grower. Like, I mean, I remember having a conversation with you at like you're 20, and where you're just like learning what are we planting where and learning what belongs where, and then you're in a position where you can go get some land and where am I going? What am I putting in it? I mean, the way you evolved as a farmer is pretty fascinating too.
Well, yeah, and like you say, going to this very thing that we're having is just to have white. I mean, I wanted to make significant white wines and rosé back in the early 2000s. It just wasn't a thing.
Yeah. Did your dad like whites?
No, I didn't. He had no idea.
No.
Well, actually, I shit you not, the first thing we ever made was a Chenin Blanc. And foot stomped it because we didn't have a press at the time. So, garage winemaking, like Dave said, that's how you start. It just wasn't a thing, and I'm just so stoked that there's, I know when Ryan worked for me back in the day, and I think at the same time, that was that same idea that we liked drinking white, and we knew that there could be great white wines in this area, and it just had to go through that lapse of time, where you had to go through the big Zinfandel days, you had to go through the Pinot days, and now in the cab world, you had to just see where the whole market was going, and I really feel like we're just at the start of this white wine thing. I feel like there's just
we really are.
I feel like there's a decade or so of people kind of coming back to where they started, maybe.
It was so funny. We were in the Loire last year. We met this grape called Romorutan, and it's in this place called Courcheverny, and it's one of the last, I guess, like one of the kings. And I knew this story. I'll get refreshed because we're going back there. We just loved it so much, but. One of the kings brought it over and insisted that they plant it. And it's like the last place where it is. It's only there, and maybe like 10 to 12 producers work with it. And it's so cool because it's so interesting. And it's got so many unique characteristics. And it's so much fun to discover a white wine variety that's just like, oh my God, and then you're like, oh, you're drinking it in the place that it comes from. And there's just something so neat about it.
Well, there's the transparency of it too. I mean, just from the field.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the really cool things about white wine. I mean, reds themselves are transparent as well, but you really, really do get to see the site. The site, doesn't, is significant in all grapes, but I feel like with whites, you can really farm that kind of ideology out there, and there's a reason why there's a Grand Cru and a Premier Cru. And there's, and that's $500 more a bottle. You're like, really? Yeah. And then you have it. And you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to that kind of side of it. Like, the site really outweighs everything in the end. And I hope that, here in the Central Coast, as we've been talking, not just Paso, I hope the Central Coast, really kind of gravitates to that and really finds more of that kind of appreciation of the individual sites and the individual plots that can make superior stuff. I think many places can make good to great wines, but there's going to be a few that will make magnificent wines.
Yes. Yeah. What is a white wine, Dave, that just stops you in your tracks? A white wine that's like, by all accounts, this is the best white wine I've had.
I don't know that there's one single one that jumps out at me. I mean, I'd say one of the gateway whites for me years ago was Smith Olafite Blanc, a white Bordeaux. And that probably opened my eyes to what a white wine could be.
Wow.
Much more than just, a simple porch pounder,
Yeah.
So other than that, I can't think of any one particular one. But I think one of the things I really enjoy is just the diversity of different types of things and different types of styles and all the really cool things that can be done with white wines between, you look to France, you look to Burgundy, to Bordeaux, you look down to South Africa, some of the cool things they're doing down there with particularly Chenin Blanc and some of the blends. And then you get up into, the Germany, Alsatian regions, stuff like that.
Right.
Also cool. I mean, I'm sorry Xavier isn't here.
I know, I'm bummed.
Great things with Alsatian varieties. But, I mean, even in the 3 block area of Tin City, you've got some really cool white wines and all different styles there.
Yeah, Desperada's doing some fun ones. And what about you, Brad? You going to say white Burgundy?
Yeah.
That is your weakness as winemakers. For me, it might be that old vine Roussanne from Beaucastel.
You had a special experience with that too.
Yeah, and then we went back last year. They were not even. I mean, they just reopened. Like it was bare bones Beaucastel, but they gave us like a tour. And he just happened to bring out some wines, and I got a chance to taste that wine again, that Vina V, or I can't say it, but the old vine Roussanne, so damn good. But white Burgundy, right? Oh.
Yeah, it was Rouleau Merceau out of Magnum. And it was an after-harvest party in Australia, and the owner was like, let's go into this cellar, and we're just buy whatever. I'm like, well, let's get that Magnum. Yeah. I looked at the price tag, and my jaw dropped. He was like, well, let's open it. Like, oh, all right. Wow. Everyone gathered around, and it was fantastic.
So fun.
But that was one of those, like, you have a few aha wines in your life, and that for white wines was definitely mine.
What was yours, Joji?
I had my Berg experience, but I also, too, I had a really exceptional German experience as well. And it was in Saale-Unstrut, which is more north in Germany, and it was Traminer, Müller-Thurgau, and and then getting the education between Cabinet and Spätlese and Auslese and all these different levels of how they do it too. And the best part about that was I take my California wines to this old winery in the cellar, and all these Germans are just dissing on it because I'm too much alcohol. I'm like, I know. I'm from California. I get it.
Yeah.
But then, then after that, we marched with torches and walked back to the castle, like I'm in some Dracula movie. So yeah, it was really more the experience of being in Germany,
right,
and just having this kind of crazy run. But I also just had a great experience in Orvieto just recently, and to really go to a place where it had just incredible geography and incredible terroir, and just to see how much they were so invested in white grapes, whether it be your Gracetto, your Trebbianos, Vermentinos, and then as they're kind of, I see where they're at, where their IGT is so much more of a big thing for them now, because they're realizing that they don't want to get stuck in the same guardrails of and I had probably the best Sauvignon Blanc I ever had, and it was from Bulgaria, and it was amazing, and they're just kind of an area. They're like, well, we're trying to go outside the box a little bit, none of this DOCG stuff. We want to do our own thing. So once again, I feel like there's maybe more exploration with white grapes now than maybe with reds.
I want to go through the brands that are going to be pouring on Friday, June 20th. One of them, I don't know how they pronounce it. What's like the Roman numeral one?
So that's, I don't know whether it's pronounced IIWII or I always say IIWII.
I can't imagine that's how they want you to say it, right?
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah,
that's Phil Montaine's brand.
That's literally what it stands for.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Oh shit, maybe it is.
Well, maybe that's the name.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, there you go. I thought you were just saying it is what it is. Like I can't say it, but
no.
But I'm looking at the others going, IIWI.
That's some catchy marketing right there.
Yeah, so that's
talking about it.
Phil Montaigne, who had been the winemaker at TH Estate, and Cyril, who had worked with him at TH, is now at Torin.
Terry Hodeboom.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's the two brands. And he's making some great whites. He makes 3 or 4 of them, primarily white Rhones, but they'll be there.
Rococo. Mm-hmm. So that's Natalie Brown?
Natalie Brown, yeah. She does exclusively Shannon. She does from a bunch of different sites all around the region.
Yeah, I liked her. I have a chat with her. She's
most
great.
of them are dry. Some of them are a little bit off dry, but they're all different styles, and she tries to express the particular sites that they come from.
Of course, Paix Sur Terre, Monochrome, Kinero, love his wines. Lone Madrone, look at this. Barton Family, awesome. Rava, Giornata, some fun kind of skin contact stuff there. Speaking of skin contact, I think Union Sacré, Xavier does some stuff. And then Tablas Creek. Man, you got a lineup here for just about a dozen wineries. That is a great batch of a dozen wineries.
Well, yeah, it was funny when I first started putting out sounders to people about a year and a half ago as to, trying to get this group together to promote white wines. Everyone was in, Everyone was like, this is great. It needs to be done. We're all in, and we want to focus on trying to spread the word about some of the great white wines.
Is your goal to showcase just Paso brands, or do you want to just focus on white wines?
Well, we kind of have a loose definition. We didn't go specifically by vineyards. It's basically...
if you're getting fruit from outside the area, why not bring other wineries involved?
Well,
right?
it's kind of like if it's made in Paso and people can come to Paso and taste it, then it's a Paso wine. And so a number of these producers use exclusively Paso fruit, Paso AVA. Some of us don't. I mean, I use...
But like Union Sacré,
Union Sacré, I think he gets some of his stuff from Oregon.
All over,
actually.
yeah, right. So I'm saying if you got Union Sacré, he's in Tin City, great. But if he's using Bien Nacido or other great fruit, well, I mean, shoot.
We are too.
I mean, we're sitting in a place where they get great fruit, Riesling or Albarino from Tamar. I mean,
exactly. And that's cool. Part of what's cool about this area, as we talked about earlier, is there are all these microclimates within easy driving distance.
Yeah.
So as winemakers, we have access to all those things, which makes us rather unique, I think. And it's one of the great things about making wine in this area, in my opinion. And so we're trying to celebrate that.
What a lineup. Some great folks. We're going to put links in the show notes. There is a link to get tickets on Explore Talk, and I'll put that link to get you right there so you can buy tickets to this. Again, Friday, June 20th, 4 to 7. Tickets super reasonable. I mean, $40. Yeah. Like this is a great. You're getting like I'm in this event at the ground floor.
Hey, we want people to we're just trying to attract people to really come and do the experience. You got to walk before you run.
Yeah.
And I think everything we're talking about is like this is just kind of a precursor for probably a lot more. And it's nice for us to kind of say, hey, we're not trying to be anything more than just a bunch of really good producers getting together and showcasing great whites. And my guess is it'll run from here, and then we'll have to figure out all these logistics later on.
Well, I mean, I should also say, I mean, this is not something we're doing for profit, really. All of the proceeds are going to
You're in the wine
charities.
business. There's no such thing as profit.
Well, I mean, the proceeds are going to must charities, too.
Oh, great.
So, we're really trying to do this more to increase exposure and get people aware of some of the great white wines that are being made in the area.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Brad?
This is just the ground floor. Last year, we had 150 people attend, and there were 6 producers. This year, we've almost doubled, and we're trying to double attendance. And then as it grows, hopefully we can start to incorporate people from outside of Paso as it becomes, a bigger event, and start telling stories of the whole Central Coast. Because like Dave's pointed to, there's so much great white wine and great places to grow it, and different microclimates and soil types. And you could grow almost anything and it'll do well.
Other great producers too.
And there's so many great producers, but you kind of have to start small. And, we have a bi-monthly meeting where, there's 6 to 10 of us that try and figure this out. So hopefully as it grows, we can invite more people, and maybe we'll take over the fairgrounds, and it'll be
go on road shows.
Maybe not.
We
talked about that too.
Who is this brand? Is this you?
Well, that's us. Yeah, that's a side project.
2 snakes and an ox, baby.
Yeah.
Do Sirop.
Tell me about it. I haven't even seen this before. Is this brand new?
So to try to keep my my people interested. Brad was wanting to kind of play around, and Barry, as you know, my former general manager, who's with Ancient Pinks now.
Yeah.
We all just decided to kind of start doing something together, and just to entertain ourselves, and it really started with uncommon varieties and uncommon wines. And we started to do Sirop. So Valangina was our first red or white launch. Sorry.
Yeah.
And
so this is the first launch of this brand.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
And what vintage is this?
23.
That's 23. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So we have a couple reds from 22.
Really? What kind of reds are you making with the brand?
We have like a Loire style Cab Franc. So super light, pretty. It's like 12% alcohol.
Really?
We did a Negrette. Which is it used to be called Pinot St. George in California.
Yeah. Where are you pricing these things? Like what do you kind of
28.
Awesome.
The reds are 35.
How fun!
So
I can't wait to taste that Cab Franc.
It's meant to be accessible. They're fresh. They're a little lighter in style. It's like what we would drink after work.
Yeah.
There's pretty wines at an affordable price where you can buy more than one and not feel guilty about drinking them.
I think it's this whole
that's great.
This whole jam that I think we're all trying to see. And I even think us white wine producers are trying to see, like, just trying to look outside of what the norm is. And I think as you go to this event, you're going to see that there's just producers that are trying to push not the envelope, but trying to just expand what the opportunities are.
Yeah.
Because I think as people who go to stores, they're unfortunately kind of subjected to what the large houses offer them, and that's anything. But I think if we can create more interest, I think reds will follow. I think all of us we're going to do. Dave may never jump into it because he knows better.
Will you ever make a red, Dave?
I don't know.
You're thinking about it.
I wouldn't do it under the Monochrome brand.
Biochrome, duochrome. I don't know.
Asterisk. I'm also sort of intrigued by the notion of can you truly blur the line between what is a white and what is a red?
You could do whatever the fuck you want.
Pour them all in black glasses. No one would ever know.
Well, no, I'm actually thinking about collaborating with someone who focuses on red to do something where you really cause people to go, huh?
See,
I don't know, is that a white
like
or
I
is it
said,
a red?
Scharfendale.
Chardonnay
and Zinfandel, right?
Scharfendale. We got it.
That's
like
a Richie.
Zinfandel. I mean, it's got to be that.
That's a shout out to Richie Hartenberger right there.
Exactly.
It's an old joke.
Oh, that's funny. That sounds very Richie. That's so great. This was so much fun. June 20th. Check it out. Links in the show notes. Brad, always great to catch up with you, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having
Your
us.
wines are tasting just incredible.
Thank you.
Great job. I love this brand. I love taking a brand. Here's like, these are the fun stories about Paso. It's like, oh yeah, so Brad and Joji, and then Barry. So is Barry still involved, even though he's at Ancient Peaks now? So that's a cool little story there, and I would never have even known what to think about this brand had I seen this label at, say, at somebody's barbecue or at someone's house. And now I get to know, and this is what a great story. And the wine's awesome.
Thank you.
I can't wait to taste the
Thank
Cab
you.
Franc.
Yeah, you'll love it.
I mean, that's going to be my
Yeah, you're a Loire guy.
Yeah.
I think you'll really like it.
Oh, I can't wait. And Dave, man, these wines are awesome. It's so great to catch up with you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, and thanks for putting this together. We thank Ryan, and we'll make sure we get him in here.
Yeah, and I want to thank Dave and some of the first guys to really start this off and really kind of charge it because it's been a lot of work on their side. So
And who was this original pack of wolves that thought of let's put this together?
Well, I started it, but there was like a short list of people that that I knew that had a real passion for white wines, made some great white wines, put the effort in.
Yeah.
And I just started contacting them.
There you go.
Ryan and Anthony and a handful of others, and the enthusiasm was definitely there.
Cheers to white
cheers.
wine.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
It's The Pour with Adam Montiel. We taste it, we spill it, we leave it all on the table. You can hear The Pour in its entirety on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. For more, visit adammontiel.com.